afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our annual PAGE Summit, acknowledging impact, identifying opportunity, and ensuring accountability. My name is Janelle Lawrence, and I'm the director of the PAGE program at the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia. On behalf of the Economy League and the rest of my team, I would like to thank you for coming today to spend a few next hours with us. I would also like to take the time to wish everyone a happy Black History Month. Choosing today, February 1st, as our rescheduled summit date was important to us, as February is Black History Month. At this time, I would like to take the time to introduce my PAGE team. Myself, the PAGE director, Kenyatta James. Most of you know Kenyatta. He is our business engagement manager. Jeff Hornstein, who'll be speaking shortly, is our executive director. We just added a new resource to the team, Melina Harris, as our diversity, equity, and inclusion data analyst, and more about her role in a little bit. And we're so thrilled to have Maria Frizelle-Roberts and Harold T. Epps as our PAGE advisors. As a reminder, today's event will be recorded, and since we do have a tight schedule, we won't be able to go around the room and give introductions, but we encourage activity in the chat. So please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, tell us what organization you're from, and please also share either what you're most excited about for Black History Month, or if you have an event that you're attending for Black History Month, please share that in the group, the chat as well, so that way we all can see what's going on around our city for Black History Month. Please also remember to keep the chat a safe and supportive space and refrain from any inappropriate language. I'd now like to take the time to thank our sponsors for supporting our event. Our Ecosystem Accountability Champion sponsor, Gilbane Building Company. Our ecosystem ally sponsor, Turner Construction Company, and our networking reception sponsors, Intech Construction LLC, LF Driscoll, and Scansa US Building. So thank you all, thank you our sponsors for supporting this event. So we have a very exciting agenda for today. Our first portion of the program is about acknowledging impact. From the stories we will share with you, we will be highlighting just some of the PAGE and Anchor successes achieved in 2021. We are very excited that with the support of our Mayor, Jim Kenney, we will be unveiling our accountability framework for 2022. And then we will transition to identifying opportunity. Through collective collaboration, we will split into groups and workshop on some of the biggest challenges to institutional supply chain and come up with solutions for combating those challenges and obstacles. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Jeff Hornstein, Executive Director of the Economy League, who will share more about the Economy League. Jeff?
Thank you, Janelle. So this is a beautiful group of faces here. Thank you for turning on your cameras. I see a lot of old friends. Hello there, David Ford, Alan Riddick. I could go on and on and on. So many great people on this call. I'm just thrilled that everyone's here. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the Economy League. Actually, this is my 4th anniversary today of the Economy League. It feels weird since so much of it's been spent sitting in my own house, but all good, all good. So the Economy League was founded in 1909 on a very simple premise that the government and the economy need to work for everyone, and that it's the citizens' business to make it so. The Economy League board now has over 60 corporate and institutional members, all aligned around this core premise. So I want to thank our key partners from our anchor institutions, Madeline Bell and Peter Grohlman from Children's Hospital, John Fry and Lucy Kerman at Drexel, Hugh Lavery, Bob Burkholder at Jefferson, Jeff Cooper, Craig Carnaroli at Penn, Keith Casper at Penn Medicine, Valerie Harrison at Temple, Juan Lopez, Marcy Ross at Independence Blue Cross. These are the C-suite leaders who have been supportive of PAGE since the very beginning, and without them, we wouldn't be here. What's been interesting in the last year is that the philanthropic world has finally caught up to us. We raised over $1 million in philanthropy in the last year to support Page. And I wanted to call out those foundations and those foundation leaders in particular: Tina Wall and Christy Poling at the Barra Foundation, Wes Somerville and Keith Leapart at Lenfest, Renee Radigan and Dom Goss at TD, Susan Lawrence Fisher and Gina Clark and Amerisource Bergen, and our most recent major supporters, Debbie O'Brien, Jim Dever at Bank of America. You're going to hear a little bit more from them later. Thank you for your faith in the program, in my leadership, in Janelle's leadership. And of course, thanks to our amazing co-chairs, two great business and civic leaders, and people I'm proud to call friends and mentors, Harold Epps and Maria Roberts. So in honor of Black History Month, I want to dedicate this summit to two heroes of mine, and you'll understand why in a minute why I want to do that. So the first is the great Reverend Leon Sullivan, the Lion of Zion, the founder of Opportunities Industrialization Centers, OIC, the man probably most responsible for the integration of the American workforce of any other human that we can point to. He was a strategist. He was an organizer of the highest order. In the 1940s, he started something called selective patronage. Came back, so many Black GIs came back from World War II, where they were supposedly fighting for freedom, fighting against the Nazis and against Japanese tyranny, and they came back to find out that they couldn't get jobs at the same pay, in the same places, the same qualifications as whites. And Sullivan always knew this was wrong, so he organized a movement to use the economic power of African-American consumers to integrate labor forces. And they had an organization called the 400 Ministers, and they said, if you don't hire us, we're not shopping from you, right? And there's some important DNA there that ties through to the current day. 1950s, he got his church, all the 400 ministers got their church members to put $10 a month into a fund called the Zion Improvement Association. And in the 60s, they used that to buy what was, until recently, the largest piece of Black-owned property in America, Progress Plaza on North Broad Street. Used their economic power to force major corporations to hire Black workers and Black managers. And then you skip forward to the 80s, Sullivan used the same principles to help end apartheid in South Africa. So again, simple truth: Black consumers have power if they organize to use it. Page comes from the same DNA. The other guy is Earl Graves Sr. He died recently. He was the founder of Black Enterprise magazine and the author of a classic business bestseller called How to Succeed in Business Without Being White. If you've never read it, it's pretty eye-opening stuff, especially because it seems like not enough has changed. He said in 1970, the Black businessman and entrepreneurs from other minorities have for the most part been systematically excluded from any meaningful participation in the economic mainstream. Black sweat, Black muscles, and Black brains have contributed greatly to the gross national product, but at the same time, Black entrepreneurs have not profited neither fully nor fairly in its rewards. As a nation, we have begun in recent years to make modest beginning towards making Black people meaningful participants in our economic system, but our people and our times require that we do more, much more than settle for these modest beginnings, end quote. And that was 1970. So 50 years later, this goal, this dream deferred, as the great Dr. Martin Luther King called it, still looms in front of us. So the challenge we're going to pose to everybody today, and the challenge that the Economy League has taken up as a whole, and of Page in particular, is to create the conditions in Greater Philadelphia for people of color to achieve their long denied measure of the American dream. So everyone in this room, I believe, has a part to play in this. I think the time is now, and we're the people to do it because no one else is. So I will get off my soapbox now and get us back to the program. But that is why we are here today.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. So at this time, I would like to introduce Maria Frizelle-Roberts, President and CEO of MFR Consultants. She's also the co-chair of our Page Advisory Committee and the first vice chair of the Economy League Board of Directors. Maria?
Good afternoon, everyone. It is really an honor and pleasure to be here. About 4 years ago, I got a call from a friend and colleague asking me to meet them for lunch, for breakfast. Now, it was not uncommon. The friend and colleague happened to be Jeff Hornstein. He would often ask me to meet him for breakfast. We would meet on a little cafe on South Street and have breakfast and talk about a number of things. But this was a very interesting morning. This morning, he actually told me about a new position he had accepted, and he had asked me if I'd be interested in being on the board. And he really thought that I would make a difference. I smiled and I said, well, I'll think about it. But for the most part, I was a little hesitant because I had been on boards before that talked about how to improve access to business for women in minority-owned companies, but they never seemed to go beyond the dialogue. Make a long story short, Jeff promised me that this was going to be different. He captivated me. I joined. But every year after that, I was still somewhat hesitant. Although the last couple of years, I have just been over the moon and excited about the progress and the things that I've seen that have gone on with the Economy League. I've got a chance I was asked to be on the advisory board of PAGE, so I had sort of boots on the grounds, working with Janelle and her team to actually look around the region to find a number of minority firms, women-owned firms that would actually be companies that the large anchor corporations could go to work with. I'll say this, and I'll get off my high horse too. I am so enamored for what Jeff just his opening remarks. Two of I think some of the most noted people that I had the opportunity to meet in my history were Leon Sullivan and also Earl Graves. And I often think in this city, if Leon Sullivan and the unions, the trade unions in this city had decided to work together, what would this region be like today? We would not have the high unemployment. We would not have the issues that we see today if that had happened. So I'm standing here before you two, or sitting here before you, and I'm saying to you that for the last 30 years, I think I told you all that I've tried desperately to meet many of you, and it's been very difficult. But it seems like in the last year or so, the ice is being chipped away, and I'm really excited about it. This year, I've been asked to be first vice chair of the Economy League. I am over the moon and excited to work, and I'm looking forward to working with Jim Markham. He's one of my favorite people. And so going forward, I want to thank everybody. I'm looking forward to working hard. I'm looking forward to being industrious and hopefully bringing about some really substantive changes as it relates to the anchor corporations working with women and Black and Brown owned corporations. So thank you for having me here, and I'm also so excited to be working with you all. I'm going to turn it back over to Janelle. Thank you.
All right. Well, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kenyatta James. I'm the Business Engagement Manager here at PAGE. Over the last year, Janelle and I have built a super strong community of anchor institutions. We've worked to cultivate relationships across these institutions, obviously with supplier diversity staff, but also with other partners and leaders within those groups. PAGE stands for Philadelphia Anchors for Growth and Equity. It is a partnership between the City of Philadelphia, the Economy League, and more than a dozen or so of our Philadelphia anchor institutions, most of whom are represented in the room today. And you'll see them pop up in the chat through these introductions. So the goal of PAGE is to bring together the institutional buying capacity from Philadelphia's hospitals, universities, major corporations, and connect them with local diverse businesses as a way of stimulating the economy. PAGE is made possible by the support of our local anchor institutions, national partners, foundations, and the government. So Jeff talked a little bit about how excited we are to see how much growth and how much support Page has experienced over the last couple of years. Last month, well, it's not last month now, but just a couple months ago, we actually received a $250,000 grant from Bank of America Foundation. Among other things, this grant will support the creation of our new DEI data analyst position. And this position is really what we're going to use to focus on tracking progress and holding us all accountable as we shift spend in a way that allows us to impact the minority businesses in the city. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that accountability framework later today. But for right now, I would like to introduce Fanchi Jenkins, the Senior Vice President of Global Supplier Diversity and Responsible Sourcing at Bank of America.
Kenyatta, thank you. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Nod if you can. Awesome. Well, first of all, this is amazing. Good afternoon. As Kenyatta mentioned, my name is Fanchi Jenkins, and I'm the head of supplier diversity and responsible sourcing for Bank of America. And I am so pleased to be with you today representing Jim Dever, who couldn't be with us, but also our local leadership team in Greater Philadelphia. So first, I got to say that Bank of America has had a supplier diversity program in place for well over 32 years. And it is a strategic imperative for our company. My team is acutely focused on increasing opportunities for diverse businesses to participate in our competitive sourcing and procurement processes. So firsthand, hands down, I truly understand well how important entrepreneurs and small businesses are to the regional economy. We at Bank of America are committed to providing small business owners with the necessary resources to sustain and grow. And over the last few months, we've seen small businesses in the Philadelphia region begin to regain their footing after a very challenging 2 years, to say the least. In our 2021 Small Business Owners Report, it showed a similar sentiment across the US. But business owners' economic confidence and revenue expectations are beginning to bounce back significantly. 60% of small businesses expect their revenue to increase over the next 12 months. And that's very, very good news. However, while these signs of progress are encouraging, the journey to full recovery is long, and we need to work together on it. So we recognized the private sector can play a pivotal role in the growth and prosperity of our community, and we remain committed to enhancing equitable opportunity and success for small businesses, especially in the Greater Philadelphia area. We continue to identify ways to support the region's efforts through local partnerships and innovative initiatives like this one. And we look forward to helping business owners in Philadelphia thrive in 2022 and beyond. So today at the kickoff of the First Page Summit, I've got to echo Kenyatta's sentiments, and we're so proud to announce a $250,000 grant to the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia's Page program, creating a more inclusive regional economy through coordinated supply chain efforts aligns with Bank of America's commitment. In addition to investing in small businesses and supporting nonprofits that address equity, we're also delivering on our $1.25 billion commitment to advance racial equity and economic opportunity in areas including jobs, housing, health, and our support of small businesses. But we know that we can't do it alone, and we look forward to working with you all and all of the partners here today. I'm honored to be sharing the virtual stage this afternoon with the Page team, entrepreneurs, and community leaders, as well as the Mayor of Philadelphia, Mr. Jim Kenney. And I look forward to an enlightening and engaging event on this very important topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We also wanted to acknowledge the incredible support of the Bear Foundation, the Linfest Foundation, and the Federal Economic Development Agency, which have all provided substantial support for Page over the last year. And I will pass it back to Janelle.
Awesome. Thank you, Kenyatta, and thank you, Vanshay, for being with us today. We really appreciate you spending some time with us. So in a bit, Mayor Kenny will lay out a framework that we are calling our 2022 Accountability Framework. But before he does that, we would like to share a brief overview of the PAGE initiative. We have a ton of new faces here. And so we wanted to just to share very briefly, our three-pronged approach for PAGE and for advancing the equity in Philadelphia's business landscape. So PAGE is broken into three groups. We have PAGE R&D, PAGE Prep, and PAGE Capital. So for PAGE R&D, that's really where the opportunity mapping happens. That's the research, analysis, and advocacy to shift purchasing power of our anchor institutions. And that's all that happens in PAGE R&D. This is where we collaborate with our anchors and find out, where are those real contracts. In 2021, we partnered with Tiffany Standard of Stimulus Inc. to analyze anchor data. Throughout 2021, we have received several requests from our anchors to figure out a way to streamline our data collection process. And so we've heard you, we've heard your requests, and we value your input. So we're excited to share that the Economy League, the Chamber of Commerce, and Stimulus Inc. will be working on a way together to streamline our data requests. We recognize that in order for all the work that we're doing to be more impactful, that we have to streamline our data request process. So more on that later, but we're really excited to be able to streamline that data process for you. For PAGE Prep, that's where we're connecting our businesses to custom consulting services to win those anchor contracts. And so in 2022, we will be partnering with Cheryl Beth Kukler of CEO Think Tank, as well as the African American Chamber and Hispanic Chambers, to build a cohort of businesses that will go through that program. And we're also very excited to announce that we have our first official MOUs that are signed with Mazars and coming up Ernst & Young, which will be offering an array of consulting services to help PAGE businesses thrive in institutional supply chains. And I'm not sure if we have a representative from EY here. I don't know if I saw Adolph or not, but we want to thank Adolph as well as Jim Welsh of Mazars if they're both here. Kenyatta, do you want to say a little bit about PAGE Capital?
Yeah. So PAGE Capital is one of the most interesting and innovative ways that we're trying to solve one of the big problems that minority businesses face, which is access to capital. So PAGE Capital connects businesses that are engaged with PAGE and positioned to win institutional contracts to an aligned investor network so that they can get those capital resources. The program of PAGE Capital is facilitated by Impact PHL in the Social Ventures Circle with the support of an EDA Build to Scale grant. And the support provided through the investor support gives one-on-one conversations, provides educational events on topics like implicit bias and closing the wealth gap, and connects to local investment opportunities. So what happens basically is that PAGE, through our knowledge of institutions, we're able to identify some of these businesses that are really well positioned, and then we're able to help connect them with investors who really want to see these businesses grow. As well as there's a capital scan, which helps these investors and businesses navigate kind of the capital needs, and then provide support for pitch/presentations and gives those opportunities to the businesses. Connected to that is the PAGE Hurdle Fund. So the Hurdle Fund is a $125,000 philanthropic capital pool that provides businesses with grants to help remove barriers. So some of these barriers, they're a little bit too small for investment, but they're too large for a business to just pay out of their working capital. So those might be things like insurance, it might be updated packaging, it might be specialized certifications that are required for large hospital or college supply chains. So we provide grants to help remove those barriers for businesses that are working through these supply chains so that they can compete for these contracts. So one example is that we're currently working on a project with a local Black woman-owned business to win a contract to provide aloe-based lotions for Black and brown patients. So things that are kind of better for those different skin types that aren't traditionally in hospital supply chains. But before they can go into these supply chains, they have to be CHG certified. And that test can run anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 per sample. When we saw this as a barrier, we realized that a grant would be the best way to help cover that cost and make sure that this business can be competitive. So the Page Hurdle Fund was created, and it was capitalized by 6 Social Venture Circle members, Peter Leone, Chris Papa, Lauren Kind McKenna, Chrissy Kind, Mike Cohen, and an anonymous foundation. This year is serving as our prototype year for the larger fund that will serve more businesses and be capitalized hopefully by more institutional investors. We have a quick video to share from Peter Leone about the Hurdle Fund. And after this, we will provide some additional spaces so that people that have interest can reach out to our partners at Impact PHL.
The future well-being of our region depends on greater racial equity, which in turn depends on institutions and individuals investing in new ways. The PAGE program's anchor institutions, however well-intentioned they may be, cannot entirely eliminate all the hoops through which local Black and brown businesses must jump in order to contract with those anchor firms. Page capital investors cannot always justify investing in small businesses that haven't yet proven they can jump through those hoops. The Hurdle Fund aims to deploy philanthropic capital so that businesses can clear those early hurdles. As they do so, Page capital investors can provide the debt and equity capital that facilitates performance and funds growth. The initial round of Hurdle Fund contributions is modest relative to the need, but we hope to demonstrate that targeted deployments of donated funds can ensure that more Black and brown businesses can get in the game. As those businesses succeed, the fund can grow to serve still more entrepreneurs.
If you're interested in learning more, you can reach out to Megan McFadden at Impact PHL or myself, and we can provide you with more information as well as some support if you or a business you know is in the supply chain and may be getting ready to deal with a hurdle. Next week, I will be on a panel co-hosted by Impact PHL and Impact for Breakfast. And we're going to be speaking more about this as well as a couple of other similar topics to just how we can remove some of these hurdles and barriers for institutions and businesses that are trying to make these sorts of connections work. And I'll pass it back to Janelle to go over some of the things we learned in our data.
Awesome, thank you. So in 2020, we requested data from our anchors and identified about $2 billion of spend across 19 different categories. And we chose those categories because we know that we have local Black and brown businesses that can perform against those contracts in those categories. So of that data request, the 2 top categories was construction and IT. Both of those industries together total close to $700 million of spend. And that's definitely a lot of opportunity that we feel can be shifted to our local Black and brown businesses. And so what's coming up next in the agenda is our panel. And we chose individuals in this space, in the construction, in the IT space, because this is where the greatest opportunity is. And we see these spaces as benchmarks for other categories as we continue this path. And so I will let Kenyatta introduce our moderator and panelists, but we're really excited to have this panel talking about the successes and obstacles and challenges within these two categories of construction and IT. So Kenyatta.
Yeah, so construction is definitely the field that I have learned the most about this year. And without the people in this group, I would be so lost. So I'm super excited to introduce the wider community to this panel, starting with our moderator, one of the most dynamic women in Philadelphia. So I would like to introduce you to Pat Thomas LaRoche of Cameron and Associates, LLC, who will be leading our panel discussion. And then once Pat goes in, all of the panelists will be introducing themselves. So Pat.
Okay, thank you, Kenyatta. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. And I would like to welcome again everyone to this PAGE Summit and also the first day of Black History Month, all right? And as Kenyatta mentioned, and Janelle, we have a great panel for you today to share a very interesting perspective on some of the challenges and obstacles that exist in trying to create an equitably and inclusive diversity environment for the construction and IT industry. But we're also going to share from the lens of two notable anchor institutions, ways to move from the intentional lens of diversity to the deliberate approach of action. So let me turn it over to our panel real quick to do a quick introduction, and then we're going to jump right in. So I guess on my screen, I see Craig first, Craig Williams.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Craig Williams, president of Pride Enterprises, general contractor and construction manager.
Chuck.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chuck Stefanowski. I lead the supplier diversity program with Independence Blue Cross. I'm happy to be part of this this group today. Looking forward to having a lively discussion. Thank you.
Awesome. And Mitch?
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Clayton Mitchell, Senior Vice President of Real Estate and Facilities for Thomas Jefferson University and Health.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. So let's just jump right in. So I'm going to start off with Craig. Craig, you have really had some major success in a very short time in Philadelphia, getting an opportunity to work on some very large scale projects with the anchor institutions. But can you kind of share with us what maybe some of those hurdles were that you had to overcome, especially as an underutilized business, to be able to even qualify for that opportunity? I think it's real important to share your space of where you came from.
Sure. I'm happy to share that several of the anchor institutions are our clients. Speaking as a diverse contractor, the process of becoming a qualified contractor for these organizations has been fairly normal, fairly straightforward. I think about it as going right through the front door, engaging by email or at an outreach event, sharing information and hoping for a positive response. If that comes, we have been interviewed and either in person or through a Zoom more recently. Then there's a vetting process where you disclose financial information and qualifications, in some instances, tax returns, and then you hope for a favorable response. The bottom line is that anchor institutions and any client, they have no obligation to hire you. You have to present yourself, you have to be qualified, and if you are given the chance, you have to show up and perform. The only real challenge I would say is winning the confidence of these clients. They are all unique. They all have different philosophies and different approaches. Some are very conservative. They may give you a chance at a very small project initially, In some instances, it might seem like something that you normally wouldn't pursue. Others will engage you at your level right away. But the bottom line is that if given the chance, you have to take the opportunity head on and perform to the best of your ability. And that will lead to other opportunities. If you're successful, you can grow the relationship on that basis.
Okay, so you talked about the importance of growing the relationship and also dovetailing a little bit more into this vetting process, okay? I kind of hear a lot, my team and I, some of the challenges or other hurdles that exist for being able to successfully onboard into different opportunities for these anchor institutions. And two of them that I can kind of think of off the top of my head that I hear all the time is insurance and bonding. Okay, so when we kind of think about this environment that we're currently in right now, this COVID pandemic that has definitely affected every small underserved business enterprise in Philadelphia. And of course, we know our bonding capabilities is tied so much to our cash flow. And now, since our cash isn't flowing because we don't really have contracts that are going, can you share from that vetting process, like how you dealt with it, or actually kind of even shared an example of maybe how you handled it since you were kind of the lead on so many different projects of being able to successfully onboard other smaller firms?
Sure. Well, bonding and insurance and, the basic capabilities, those are prerequisites to participate in any kind of procurement activity. Fortunately, our business was developed for many years in the public sector, participating in various initiatives and what have you that allowed us to have the financial capacity to meet those qualifications at the outset. But it is a challenge. The whole conversation around diversity does reflect the reality that many diverse businesses are distressed, particularly as you point out. The conditions that we've been enduring for the last couple of years because of COVID have really, put certain firms in a compromised position. And, there are strategies and things that we've witnessed and participated in recently that help companies overcome those challenges. For example, we're performing a project for Children's Hospital, their Child Wellbeing Center, and they hired us as their construction manager, general contractor, and requested that we meet a fairly ambitious diversity spend goal. That resulted in identifying a team of contractors where a handful of them were not able to meet the qualifications. And so with the involvement of PAGE, the influence and participation of representatives of PAGE, dialogue was established where CHOP examined their qualifications and actually relaxed their bonding requirement, which allowed us to award contracts to a couple of diverse businesses that were experiencing that challenge and couldn't meet the bonding requirement. This was a big impact because the goal was a 70% diversity spend on the project. Had we not been able to bring those companies to the table, it would have been cut more than in half, below 35%. And I'm really happy to report that the result that we've achieved is upwards of 90% minority participation on that contract. So, the challenges are real, particularly in recent months, but with flexibility and the commitment of anchor institutions, these things can be overcome.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. 90% in the fact that you were able to have PAGE, CHOP, and Pride working together in a collaboration to be able to overcome an obstacle like insurance and bonding that stops many of the diverse firms that are on this phone right now to be able to get an opportunity for a contract. So I would love to make sure that you and CHOP and PAGE just to continue to share those tricks and trades with other anchor institutions. And we now have a living example that it can be done. So we don't need to think anymore that insurance and bonding has to stay an obstacle that cannot be overcome. So thank you, Craig. All right, so with that said, I'm going to kind of move into talking to some of our anchor institutions a little bit. Let's start off with Mitch from Jefferson. You have really been able to kind of be recognized from the under the UBE community, as well as being recognized within your peers, of being able to really kind of go in and look at your supplier diversity channels internally and really look at how can I move the needle internally to change, to be able to successfully onboard more minority diverse firms. And you have definitely been having some success there. And if you could really kind of share some tips, some real tips that these other anchor institutions can really start to implement, it would be great.
Hey, thanks, Pat. I think there's a cliche that says, culture eats strategy for lunch. So if you don't have the right culture inside of your team, your organization, your strategies, the programs you put in place, the processes that you put in place are going to fall short, because they're at the end of the day administered by people. So I think for us at Jefferson, particularly in my space, real estate and facilities, the first thing that we had to do is just evolve the culture to be able to form the relationships that Craig talked about, right? Because, project managers are people too. And we had a very project manager-centered selection process. And so if that trust wasn't there and there wasn't that foundation, it was really going to be even, hard just to kind of get in and get a meeting. I think so for us, it was setting that expectation. Some people bought into it. Some people decided, it was time to move on. And then at the same time, the people that we brought in, we made sure that they were fully aligned with the objectives at hand. I think, second, the opportunity, because most of us don't post our projects, on any type of public website or anything of that sort. And it's nothing malicious. In many cases, we're executing these projects sort of hand to mouth. So there's no real extensive list of programs or projects to really give people the head start. And that advantages large companies that have scale and the ability to, maneuver teams to be able to take care of certain types of efforts. So I think we haven't fixed that issue at Jefferson yet, but we're looking, we're working to build a broader pipeline of actionable projects that we have surety that are going to make it through our board and give the WBE, MBE community a little bit more of a runway to understand where those projects are coming in. And the way we can make that happen in the supplier diversity space is we actually need that to operate more efficiently as a corporate entity. So when you can parallel operational imperatives with community imperatives, I think you have a really good mix there.
Okay, all right. But I like the fact that, you really looked internally to see that it's like, maybe I need to tweak the culture a little bit, right? And making sure that your project managers, who sometimes have a tendency to be the gatekeeper, and being able to think outside the box and really evaluate these minority firms. So that's really good in there. And then I think also the opportunity to be able to literally give the minority businesses opportunities to forecast, right? To get as much lead time as they possibly can, to be able to get in a position to be able to to apply or bid on these particular projects. So all of that is great. Really, really appreciate what you're doing and the success that Jefferson is having. Is there anything else that you are looking at as additional opportunity that Jefferson has to even create more opportunities?
Yeah, so while we're building that pipeline of projects, it's really critically important to have near-term successes. So we created a director of facilities contracts, pulled all of those contract slate selections into, his arena, and really established supplier diversity as a selection criteria for our contract. So we've developed a much more strategic approach. And so because we don't have that pipeline yet, we have to be more intentional in getting near-term opportunities out to the underrepresented communities. And so having that director gives people sort of that central point to really understand what's coming down the pike to the extent that we know it, and build relationships with someone who's really has a heart for this work. In addition to his role as a contracts officer, he is very, very much, sort of dedicated to supplier diversity. And so that enables him, I think, in a way to connect with people that maybe Jefferson and my space hadn't been able to connect with people before. It certainly is changing the perspectives of people who engage not only with him, but with our other folks. And oh, by the way, there's an efficiency that's come out of this too. Our project managers can focus just primarily on the project delivery, which is where they were focused anyway. So we're actually becoming much more efficient and effective at running our program as we make that program more accessible to underrepresented communities.
Okay, so I'm going to ask one more question, okay? It's just that, can you share, more perspectives on how an NBE on this call right now can actually, what's their best entry point to get connected, to be able to see and feel some of these changes, get connected to that new director of supplier diversity, or just get connected inside of Jefferson's network?
Well, just the relationship between Pride and Jefferson. It was a call that Craig and I had. And Craig, I don't know if you remember, but it was probably about 90 minutes we spent on the phone, right? And
I recall.
yeah, it's hard for me to have less than a 90-minute conversation, but so some of the things that really piqued me about Pride is, one, he had 8A experience, so that told me, oh, right, he should know administration, right? Because administrivia can kill you. The administrative burden of being able to sort of meet some of the deliverable requirements outside of the project. It also, his experiences with the VA, helped me understand that, so he knows about dust control and about ICRA and PICRA and all of those idiosyncrasies of working in a care environment. But I think the most critical piece that I got was character. Right, that above the capabilities and the competencies, there was the character, and you can't get that just in an email exchange or anything of that sort. And so I had to sort of force multiply, and so force multiplying for me was hiring a guy like John Putnam, who's our director of facilities contracts, who's focused on that on a day-to-day period. John maintains a spreadsheet of the capabilities and competencies of a variety of contractors, including underrepresented folks. And strategically, as part of our strategic way forward, we've integrated that into our execution and operations plans. But to the core of your question, Pat, you got to get in front of folks. I'll talk to folks whether they're ready or not, right? Because it's just equally important, if they're not ready, to say, okay, here's the pathway that, I think from what I hear, you need to sort of lay out to make yourself ready going down range. And there's multiple ways to get to the game. If there's a direct contract, there's subcontractors, subcontractor opportunities, even possibly hiring yourself out to a company to really get some of that expertise so you can bring that back to your company. So, depending upon where that particular vendor is in that particular moment, there's some opportunities to help lay out strategies to sort of grow those capabilities to be able to compete for the anchor work.
And I'm so glad that you shared that because of the fact that, Mitch, you and our conversations, and you have sat down with my team because I actually thought I was really ready to be able to take on a certain type of work and opportunities for Jefferson. And through those conversations and you meeting with my team and talking to us, we got to be able to see some aha areas that we need to tighten up on to be able to position ourselves better, right? So we were able to kind of match up through John Putnam as well and other people on your team to be able to identify the right project and the right entry point. And that literally goes back to what you were talking about earlier, Craig, that opportunity to make sure that we are matching up correctly. So thank you so much for, sharing that. So I'm going to switch gears just a little bit off of construction, but hey, guys, feel free to jump right in if you have anything else that you would like to share. And I'm going to go over to Chuck, my man from Blue Cross and Blue Shield. All right, he has done an unbelievable job in trying to onboard diverse firms into the IT sector at IBX. And it has been absolutely, historically, everybody says it's hard to find, people or diverse firms to be able to handle any type of IT work. And then being able to successfully onboard women in that industry. And Chuck has done a great job in that. And what I would really want you to do, Chuck, is just walk us through the process of how you successfully was able to identify potential candidates and how then you actually onboarded them into the process.
Okay, thanks, Pat. Thanks for the introduction. I'm the Supplier Diversity Director for Independence Blue Cross. And before I even talk about the sourcing, I want to talk a little bit about our company, which really makes the sourcing process, I think, easier to maneuver, both internally at the company and for the suppliers. So I'm fortunate to work for a company where DE&I really is part of our DNA. It permeates everything that we do. Our supplier diversity program actually was recoined recently we call it economic equity, right? Not supplier diversity. And the reason we're doing that is our program is a 30-year plus program. It has C-level support, and we routinely report out the results to the board of directors on a routine basis. So DE&I at Independence has the same level of responsibility to the board as the finance or the investment or the strategic initiatives committee. So DE&I sits at the very top, and it has for many years prior to me joining the company 20 plus years ago. And I mention these points because that C-level support is really key in the success of what I'm going to talk about in a minute. So the sourcing process I want to talk about, I'm asked to talk about technology, but we really apply this to everything that we buy. In our case, the majority of what we buy is technology, consulting services, professional services of those type. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about a few of those steps and a lot of time talking about networking, because I really think that's key to it's a secret sauce that really makes things happen. So the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you have opportunities for recurring spend. And what I mean by that, you want to look for opportunities where a diverse supplier can come in, do some work, grow their business, and that's a spend area that Independence will continue to have spend year over year. It helps you build a really nice level of diverse spend. It enables a diverse supplier to grow, as well as it enables your corporate spend targets. It enables you to meet those targets and exceed them. So you get some nice base work and you continue to grow it year over year. That really helps the program be successful. With regards to finding diverse companies to support our program, we work with the Eastern Minority Supplier Development Council, WEBEC, the Women's Business Enterprise Council, all the diverse chambers within our region, as well as the Economy League and the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce. And I would say that Diverse Procurement Collaborative from the Greater Philadelphia Chamber, the PAGE Initiative through the Economy League, those are all great resources for ideas to build your program and to grow your supplier diversity program, as well as meet suppliers. I actually met Maria at an initial PAGE event a couple of years ago, and it was really through that event we developed a really great friendship. And the last one that I want to mention, and it's frequently overlooked, talk to your diverse suppliers that are successful at your company. They frequently know other diverse suppliers that are good, and they're not going to recommend a supplier that's not going to be able to meet your needs because they don't want to risk their business or their reputation. We've had a lot of success finding technology and other suppliers through those references. Very highly valued, very great resource. The next step, which I really think Mitch hit on some of these things, and I think even some of the things that Craig talked about earlier, it's around selling the diverse business, right? So like when I meet with a diverse supplier, I'm their internal salesperson, unpaid by them, but I'm their internal salesperson, right? They reach out to me and say, hey, I have a business, this is what it looks like, and this is, I can provide these services to independents. And so what you want to do is you want to get to know what the supplier has to offer. One of the ways I do that is I ask the supplier to prepare a one-pager or an elevator speech. It's a one-page document that says, here's who I am, high level, here's what I do, right? And I work back and forth with them on that document to make sure that it very clearly describes what they do. What's their home run? What are they good at? What do they want to lead at independence, right? And then I take that document and I meet with the internal decision maker for that product or service and say, I met this supplier. This is an awesome supplier. You'll like to meet with them. They're nice people. I'd like to have you get together for lunch or meet them in a Zoom call or whatever the case may be. And the idea is you want to have the decision maker meet the supplier way in advance of the RFP. I'm going to say this twice. If you're waiting for a request of proposal, an RFP, to introduce a supplier to the decision maker, you're too late. So if you're waiting for the RFP, this is both to the suppliers and the anchors, it's too late. What you want to do is have the diverse supplier meet the decision maker way in advance. And when they have a need, they'll frequently call me and say, Chuck, I met that supplier. Remember like 6 months ago, I forget their name. I want them on that RFP. And what that does is it's in their mind that they can do the work. They receive that request and they end up getting the work. Or maybe if it's even a direct negotiation, might not even be an RFP because they were so impressed with the supplier at that initial meeting. So that networking and that piece of it is so very important. You can't just say, here's a supplier from EMSDC, give it to a sourcing person, they put it on the list for the RFP and they send it out. Because then you're just a number on a spreadsheet, right? All of us anchor institutions, we have this really great software that loads in all your proposals and it lists you and scores you, but it's not, you don't get that personal connection with the supplier that I think is so very important. And then from there, it's just follow up and execution. And I got to tell you that, one of the things that those one pagers are helpful for is a lot of us that are practitioners of supplier diversity within the city all know each other. And I'll frequently get calls saying, hey, do you know a good supplier that does X, Y, Z? And I send their one pager out. So what Independence is trying to do is either utilize a diverse supplier within Independence or within our region. Why does that make sense? We're the largest insurer within the region. If businesses in Philadelphia are successful as they grow and they get insurance, we're hoping they'll use our insurance. So DE&I is good for business. It's not just, use a diverse supplier. It makes sense, right? This is our home base. We'd like our suppliers to be within that base. We want them to grow and then grow and grow with them. Hope that was helpful.
Oh, it was definitely very, very helpful. I mean, part of the themes that I heard, throughout this whole conversation so far has been how important relationships are, networking, being organized, make sure that you clearly understand what your services are. You talked about creating this one-page document. Most of us may think it may be a capability statement, but Chuck, maybe that's something, right? If you can even maybe share your template so that, with us, and that would be great so that we can just get another perspective of what that looks like. Is there anything else? I know we talked a little bit offline that was something around your payment term structure for minority businesses that are in your program. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that is something that could be very beneficial to other anchors that are on the phone.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I'd like to also give a shout out to Paige and the Economy League because I had heard one of our peer anchor institutions made this change, and it spurred a conversation with my executive, John Kalina, and to speak about support. He's on the call today as well. And I went to John and said, hey, I'm thinking about access to capital with diverse businesses in our region. What do you think about moving our payment terms to immediate for diverse suppliers? He thinks, I think it's a great idea. Let's do an analysis. What's it going to cost us, right? And it really, the cost of capital for a big company is much less than for a smaller startup. So we moved our payment terms to immediate. It really wasn't much of a selling point. I met with John because I think it's a good idea. He ran it past our CFO. We made the change. So we just moved the payment terms for diverse suppliers to immediate.
Wow, you say it's so simple, that was so easy to put into place, and it's something that could truly benefit the diverse community, especially in construction. All right, to really be able to help with our cash flow, to be able to give us some land legs on these projects a lot more. Wow.
You know what? I would say for Pat, again, a shout out for my company. It's because of the support from the top, because the CEO, the CFO, my vice president, and all the executive leadership are tied in. When they hear a good idea, it's not so hard to sell. Like, why are you doing it? What's the benefit? Okay, do it. It's not, it really, it really makes it easy for someone in my position to be able to move things forward.
Well, I have a lot of respect for your leadership to being able to, embrace something like that, because honestly, it just makes good business sense. And especially with us, in this pandemic COVID environment, we need to really be thinking about doing some innovative approaches like that to be able to help our diverse firms. Well, everybody knows I can talk about diversity forever, but and inclusion and trying to make sure things are equitable. But all right, I got the little cue, I got to get off. So thank you very much, panel. I really appreciate it. I think we put some good information out here to our diverse UBEs. And I guess with that said, thank you. And I will turn it over, I guess, back to Janelle.
Kenyatta.
Yeah, sorry.
I'll be hopping right in.
I was on a roll.
We get
Missed
confused
that
all the
part.
time at this point. Yeah, so thank you so much, Pat, Mitch, Chuck, Craig, for sharing your experiences, the challenges that you face, the hurdles. Later on in our workshop portion of the program, we'll be coming back to some of the key points that were made, or some similar points and challenges. But right now, I'm excited to introduce our accountability structure portion of the meeting. So to get us kicked off, I would like to introduce Sean Carlin of Gilbane, our ecosystem accountability sponsor, who will say a few words.
Thanks, Kenyatta. So it's been an interesting past 2 years, to say the least, met with many challenges. Traditionally speaking, our greatest growth and achievements come from times of adversity. With that in mind, there's never been a greater time or more sustained focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We must understand why the diversity of our Black and Brown businesses do not match the diversity of our great city. As Kenyatta introduced, the portion of this program is entitled Ensuring Accountability. Here at Gilbane, this is not a new focus. We're attacking DEI on many levels, both internally and externally, and at the individual staff, workforce, and vendor level. On the internal side, we've laid the framework for our social governance by creating intentionality, holding our leaders accountable to drive sustainable growth of diversity and inclusion within our culture. We have woven accountability of inclusive behaviors into our employee performance criteria, and we've established rewards and recognition programs that highlight acting inclusively. We're focused on diversity within our recruiting and ensuring diversity is well represented within our rising leaders. We have very well-established employee resource groups, including UJIMA for our Black and African American employees. Now, to bring that full circle, UJIMA derives its name from the Kwanzaa principle of collective work and responsibility. Its meaning, quite literally, is to build and maintain our community together and to make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems and to solve them together. This is our position. We have enjoyed some early successes, both corporately, over $2 billion of spend awarded in just the past 3 years, and locally with projects that have exceeded that which was, quite frankly, recently thought of as not being possible in Philadelphia. Most notably being Philly Live Casino, which saw a combined 68% participation, 52% alone on the minority side, 16% on women-owned businesses, as well as 64 diverse contracts issued on that project alone. Our methods can best be witnessed through our Rising Contractor program that now enters its third cohort locally. The first two cohorts saw 14 vendors graduate from the program, which is composed of 8 sessions, 2 hours a week, with varying topics such as mitigating risk and developing financial strength. Once firms graduate, they are assigned a mentor in a leadership role at Gilbane, who serves as a resource and advocates on behalf of that firm for future opportunities. For any attendees of this summit who have not yet participated in that program and are interested, please find Mark Zamrowski's contact info in the chat section and contact him directly. So we're committed in helping to eliminate barriers that prevent our diverse business partners from achieving the growth that they so desire and have even committed to a corporate spend goal of 20% of our yearly revenue, regardless of whether that goal is set by our customers. So in keeping with the elimination of barriers to equity, Mayor Kenny has been intentional about making Philadelphia a more equitable city. He understands the link between growing diverse businesses and taking on stubborn inner city poverty. But most of all, Mayor Kenny understands the importance of aiming high. His bold proposals like the Rebuild program have been key to driving the city forward. So without further delay, it's my pleasure to introduce Mayor Jim Kenny. Mayor Kenny regrets that he cannot be here in person today, but he has pre-recorded remarks that we will now share with you.
Greetings, and thanks to the Economy League for pulling together this much-needed convening of major institutional buyers and sellers. I'm pleased to share the virtual stage with former Commerce Director Harold T. Epps, as well as Council Members Squilla and Gauthier. This is a very appropriate way to kick off Black History Month. Since the beginning of our administration, we have been strong supporters of PAGE because we think it represents exactly the kind of collaborative approach we need to move the needle on poverty alleviation, wealth building, and job creation in our city. Our major eds and meds, CHOP, Drexel, Independence, Jefferson, Penn, Temple, are leaders when it comes to localizing and diversifying their supply chains. But the reality is, while we have bent the poverty curve slightly downward in the past 6 years, we have a lot more work to do, especially as we work to drive an equitable and inclusive economic recovery in the wake of this pandemic. All of you in this room are a key part of the solution, and I'm sure you will agree. We need a framework for accountability that will make sure pledges and conversations get transformed into contracts and growth. The City of Philadelphia has over 2,000 plus minority, women, and disabled-owned business enterprises registered in the Office of Economic Opportunity. These business vendors represent vast sectors from trades to professional services. I would like to propose an ambitious goal today to target up to $75 million net, new dollars, be spent with these firms and other Black and Brown-owned firms in the city in the year 2022. So again, I thank you all for what you're doing, but more importantly, for all you're going to do in 2022 to help us create a truly greater and fairer Philadelphia.
And now I would like to introduce our ecosystem ally sponsor, Turner Construction. So Dave Kaminsky is another person that has been really instrumental to driving forward change in the city. And I'm really excited to bring him up to speak a little bit about his organization and introduce our next speaker.
No, thank you, Kenyatta, and thank you everyone for attending. Wow, what a great group of people on this call today. I'm glad to be a part of it. So like Kenyatta said, I'm Dave Kaminsky and I'm the general manager for Turner Construction. And as one of the leaders in the industry, we understand the importance of setting a good example. That's why our team at Turner has committed to not only maintaining our own supplier diversity goals for every project, but also continuing to go above and beyond those goals, because it's abundantly clear that the methods of inclusion used in the past might have probably provided a momentary benefit, but they're not a means towards generating sustained growth like we want to see. And that's what we need. So to affect lasting change takes more than one company, takes more than 5 companies, 10 companies. It takes all of us working together to find new opportunities and to leverage this collective power that's on this call that we have to move that economic needle forward. We use the word here, Turner relentless. We need to be relentless at every level and continue to raise the bar in creative ways to truly build capacity within Philadelphia. Different tiers, whether it's a $5,000 contract, 10,000, 50, 500,000, 5 million. We need to create that capacity at the different level of tiers to truly see growth 30 years from now. And that's what we're striving to do. So Councilmember Mark Squilla is someone that also leads by example. His district is one of the most diverse in the city with a vibrant mix of small business and anchor institutions. As chair of City Council's Committee of Commerce and Economic Development, he has demonstrated his commitment to equity and inclusion. It's through that citywide lens that Councilman Squilla has decided to lend his leadership to Page's effort to build a more equitable business community. It is in the spirit that I would like to introduce you to Councilman Mark Squilla. He could also not be here today, unfortunately, but he has recorded some remarks that we will now share. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Councilmember Mark Squilla. Thanks to the Economy League and to Janelle and Kenyatta for convening this much-needed meeting of major institutional buyers and sellers. I am pleased to be sharing this stage with Mayor Kenny and my colleague, Councilmember Gauthier. I'm here wearing two hats. First, as the Councilmember for the 1st District, I am grateful that we're home to Jefferson Health and Pennsylvania Hospital, among other important major institutions. They are important employers, real estate developers, and engines of growth. It's exciting to see the tremendous impact that Jefferson has made on the entire Market East neighborhood. I was happy to work with them to develop the new pavilion at 11th and Market and their new proposal on 9th and Chestnut. As Mayor Kenny said, while we're moving in the positive direction, we have a lot more work to do, and you in this room will play a big part of that. Wearing my second hat as chair of the City Council's Committee on Commerce and Economic Development, I'm acutely aware of the high level of poverty in the city. The city needs more quality jobs and the opportunities for minorities to own businesses. My committee will pay close attention to the impact reports that the Economy League will be sending each quarter. I am committed to holding hearings at least once a year to ensure that the pledges and promises are in fact translating to contracts, jobs, and growth. I echo Mayor Kenny's challenge. Let's work together to shift $75 million in new set spend in 2022 to our local firms. My office stands ready to work with you, with Paige, and with the business community to make 2022 the year we bend the poverty curve steeply downward. I thank you all for what you are doing, but more importantly, for all you will do in 2022 to help us create a greater Philadelphia. The time is now, and we have the power to do this. Thank you.
My friend Mark Squilla for being there, for Mayor Kenny. Next up, I wanted to, and sorry, these remarks were finalized before we got Isaiah Thomas from an Introduce Next. Good friend, great leader in the city, young up and coming council member. If you don't know him, he is worked with me at the city controller's office for a number of years. I've gotten to know him well personally. He's just one of the most solid humans I know. The reason we asked him to be here today is that he sponsored a bill called Keep It Local that will basically ensure that diverse businesses are going to have a better opportunity for government contracts, which of course is a great, leg into or step on the ladder into a variety of other opportunities. So I want to give Isaiah a minute to say a couple words about his buy local bill and how we can kind of all work together as one ecosystem.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to be very brief. I want to first thank my good friend, Jeff Ornstein, for inviting me here today. As he stated, we've known each other for a significant amount of time, and I'm proud of the work that he has done and continues to do as it relates for his advocacy, for the city of Philadelphia. So thank you, Jeff. Our Keep It Local legislation was recently passed, and basically what it does is it does exactly what we often are asking businesses to do, which is invest in the city of Philadelphia. If we're going to ask some of our anchor institutions, our bigger hospitals and universities, similar to what Councilmember Squilla just mentioned, to invest in local Philadelphia-based businesses, then we as a municipality have to lead by example. And so our legislation does just that. It puts the city of Philadelphia in a position where the city and the administration is required to create benchmarks every year as it relates to what we're going to do as far as local procurement opportunities and opportunities for Philadelphia-based businesses. And that benchmark must be met by the administration. This February, towards the end of this month, it's February 1st now, so we're in February. Later this month or early next month, we'll be having hearings that will essentially examine local procurement in the city of Philadelphia as far as how it works, what's going on with Philadelphia-based businesses, and what we can do better. So thank you for the opportunity to just communicate the legislation. Again, I'm Councilmember Isaiah Thomas. I'm a council member at large in the city of Philadelphia, and the legislation is called Keep It Local. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you. And of course, the legislation is inspired by the work that you've been doing for a long time. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, my friend. Back to you, Janelle.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So to make the mayor's challenge real, we will be breaking into small groups in a bit. So once we have Jamie's remarks, what we're going to do, our team is going to break the group into 8 breakout groups. Each of the groups will have a moderator and a staff person from ELGP. And what we're going to do is we're going to give everyone a link. The link will be dropped in the chat, and we will be using a Mentimeter link code. So you're going to click on the link, answer 3 questions, and then you're going to come back to the group and discuss the questions that are posed here. And we'll also, the ELGP staff will also have those questions for discussion. So, we heard a lot today. We heard a lot from the panel about different initiatives, and we heard the remarks from the mayor about our $75 million net new. So we want to each group have some dialogue around these questions here. So I'm not sure, has Jamie joined yet?
Yeah, just now, so I will spotlight her.
Awesome. Hi, Jamie, can you hear me okay?
Hi, Janelle. Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome. The floor is yours, love.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thanks so much, and good afternoon, everyone. I want to echo Mayor Kinney in thanking the Economy League and Janelle and Kenyatta for pulling together this much needed convening of institutional buyers and sellers. We've heard inspiring success stories today, but as Mayor Kinney alluded to, we need to do better if we're going to put a dent in the systemic challenges that our city faces, like poverty and gun violence. As council member for Philly's 3rd District, I'm proud and grateful that institutions like CHOP, Penn, Drexel, U Sciences, and a growing number of life sciences firms call our corner of the city home. They are major employers, not to mention sources of growth and development for our city. But as we all know, that growth has not consistently been equitable or inclusive. Some of the most under-resourced neighborhoods in our city are a stone's throw away from these wealthy and thriving institutions. Rectifying this is very hard work. We need to make sure that these institutions and companies are having the greatest possible positive impact on communities that have historically been left out and left behind. I look forward to working with the Economy League, with Janelle and Kenyatta, and with all of you to hold each other accountable. At this time, we'll be breaking into smaller groups for approximately 30 minutes to have some dialogue on the opportunities that can lead us to the $75 million spend goal that's been discussed and the challenges that may arise in that process. Each group has a mix of supply chain professionals, minority business owners, general contractors, civic leaders, and Economy League staff, as well as a moderator. Your moderator will lead the discussion, but we want to hear from you. If you have any success stories from your organization that could serve as a best practice for the larger effort, please do share that with your groups. Thank you all for the important work you do now, and especially going forward as we aim for that $75 million spend goal. I'll see you all back here in a bit to recap our conversations. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jamie. So yes, we will be going into groups now. And again, just to remind everyone, there is, if you look in the chat, there is a link, and we'll post it again, but you're going to click on that link and type in that code, and there's going to be 3 questions that pop up. So everyone individually will do that. Click on the link, type in the code, and answer the 3 questions. And we'll give you a few minutes to do so. And then I would say in about 3 minutes or so, your moderator will begin the conversation. So take some time to answer those 3 questions. And then we're really looking forward to coming back and talking about the dialogue within the group. So what we're going to do now is report back. Jamie's going to lead the discussion, but we want to hear, what the groups talked about. And as you can see here on the screen, this is some of the answers that everyone typed in during the first part of the workshop. So Jamie, I'll pass it on to you.
Great. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all had some very interesting conversations. I'm going to ask each moderator to please share with the audience about highlights from each group's conversation. I will start with my group. I'll sort of recap our discussion. So we mostly focused on the first question, which was, if you had a magic wand, what would you change as it relates to supplier diversity? And some of the discussion was around removing bias from decision makers and this sort of preconceived notion that minority-owned firms are underperforming. Continuing that discussion of bias, we talked about not only eliminating bias from people and decision makers, but eliminating bias from technology and processes, and getting rid of algorithms that really can strike against minority-owned firms and have really the same effect as redlining had on many of our neighborhoods, and which many of our neighborhoods still suffer from. We had an interesting discussion around finding ways to hold larger contractors accountable. So not just allowing people to set goals and say, you know, they did their best and they didn't reach the goals, but having consequences. Do those firms lose contracts if they don't meet their MBA targets? We also had what I thought was a very interesting and nuanced conversation around risk. You know, there was discussion around smaller and minority-owned firms being willing to take on risk, but appropriate risk, and at the same time making sure that opportunities that you're going for won't sort of put too much weight on the organization. For my part, I thought that I was glad we had a nuanced discussion around that. In my career, you know, and I'm not as immersed as in all of this as you are, but in my career, I've seen where, you know, Black and brown people have actually not been rewarded for taking risk. And so as an example, I used to lead the Sustainable Business Network, and a dynamic that I thought was interesting was that there would be these young white startup professionals that would be sort of fawned over by venture capitalists. And so I think risk is a muscle that you build. And I think that many minority firms haven't been able to have that same opportunity. So I was glad we had a nuanced conversation around that. We also talked about making sure that there's risk on the larger contractor side, and that they're willing to go with firms that they don't know as well, and they're willing to really invest in the exercise of trust, in getting to know new firms and build new relationships. And then we also had a discussion around the importance of mentorship and relationship building. So it was a pretty full discussion for half an hour, and a lot of rich ideas from a diverse pool. We'll have the next, whomever wants to go next, who was moderating one of the groups.
Can go next. Our group had a pretty interesting conversation. We started off discussing kind of the ranking questions, and we talked about how one of the things that I thought was really unique that came out was the fact that for a lot of businesses, minority business leaders, they've been kept out of these conversations in these communities for so long that they might not know the language, they might not know the terminology, they might not know exactly how to go in and compete at the same level, especially when they're competing with large businesses that might have an entire department just focused on institutional clients. So how do you, as a business leader who's trying to grow your business, understand what your opportunity is? And then another thing that came out of that was the fact that when you're trying to sell something to an anchor, you don't get the feedback mechanisms that you do when you're selling to like a mid-market or a small business. So you're not necessarily leaving your meeting feeling like, oh, that went great, they're probably going to go with me. You might get a bunch of stone-faced people that are just do procurement all day taking notes. So for entrepreneurs that have very, very limited time, it can be difficult for them to assess how valuable those meetings are and to know whether or not they should be following up and putting their energy into these organizations, when if they sell something to another type of organization, they get almost immediate feedback on how things are going and how likely they are to get that contract. And then the final point that I thought was just really masterfully put was the idea that everyone in this ecosystem wants to provide support on their own terms. There's tons of supplier diversity trainings provided by anchor institutions, by CMs, by different support organizations, even like us, Page. There's sometimes education provided by the city. There's mentoring programs, but we all create it based on what we think and then put it out there. And for an organization that's trying to navigate up, it just looks like there's all of these different pieces and options, and they might not be sure where to go to get what support to take their business to the next level. So we need to be focused on better collaboration across all of our organizations and making sure that any entrepreneur that needs support knows where to get the support they need in that moment for that contract or growth path that they are pursuing. And I'll pass it to the next person.
So I want to be mindful and respectful of everyone's time, because I know we could talk about this all night. So what I want to do now, if it's okay, is hand the floor to Harold to close us out. But what we're going to do is we're going to collect all the notes that was shared in each of the groups, and we're going to make sure that we have a summary that we send out to all the participants. Because I know my group, we had a really great conversation. So what we'll do is we'll summarize all the notes, and then we'll send that out to everyone, because I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So Harold, are you still here, Harold?
I am still here. So good afternoon, and I will be very brief in honor of time, but let me just say that I am thrilled and encouraged about today's session. And first of all, thank you and congratulations to the Page team, led by Jeff Weinstein and Janelle Lawrence. Secondly, I was in a group that I am pleased to say, Janelle and Kenyatta, that they thought the $75 million goal was too low. And I want to repeat that. The teams kind of, challenged ourselves to what we thought reasonable, given what we thought last year's number it was. We've heard some data that says maybe last year's number is not recorded properly. It's probably too low. And we need to go back and revisit this year because some people are up to the challenge of a bigger number. So I'll leave that for your thought. So as I close, a couple of things. One, the number we think too low. Do we have the infrastructure to do this? Page has done a fabulous job over the last 3 years of putting the pieces in place that will allow this intervention to sustain itself. Do we have the targeted opportunities? We've given to the anchors at least 20 different categories, and more are emerging. So yes, out of the $2 billion that we've identified, we ought to be able to get over $100 million without much struggle from my perspective, though I don't have to do the work you do. But 100 million, if I just round up out of 2 billion, is 5% of the number articulated on the front end. So again, challenge. But here's the real question. And you've heard me say this before, but do we have the will to do it? And I'm encouraged by today because I think we are getting there. And so let me just share with you a couple of words that I picked up today. Collaboration and partnerships. I'm pleased by the work that Gilbane is doing and Turner are doing about increasing the level of collaboration and partnership in the work that's moving the construction number. We're getting more aggressive. We're getting more entrepreneurial. We are talking about increased transparency, and together we can be transformative. When I sat in the seat of a CEO of one of America's largest Black-owned companies here in Philadelphia, I was struck by our reality, which is shared by many other Black and brown firms here in Philadelphia. And the stark reality is that they do more business outside of Philadelphia than inside Philadelphia. And quite frankly, that is something that we should not be proud about. We should change it. Therefore, I am very appreciative and applaud Councilmember Thomas's challenge and legislation about increasing the focus on buy local. And so for those of you who have worked with me, I'm looking at Mark Mills. Here it comes again, Mark. We are going in the right direction, but we got to go faster. And so I think we are prepared to do that. Let's get about it, such that when we report out to whoever we report out with accurate data and being transparent, that we're delivering on the goals and we will exceed whatever goal we set. But let's raise that number today to 100 million. Let's go get it done. So outstanding 2 hours. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Happy Black History Month and enjoy your evening.
And let's make some Black history.
Yes, yes.
Thanks,
Mark
everyone.
Mills would say, let's make it a great day.
Sounds just like him. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.
Take
Bye,
care,
guys,
everybody.
everybody.
All
Take
right,
care.
thanks for sticking it out.
Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.